The year is 1943. Snow falls quietly over the Eastern Front. A German infantry division is ordered to attack a Soviet position. One more hopeless assault. Pause. Exhausted men stare into the white void ahead of them. They know what waits there: machine guns, artillery, death. Someone whispers, "This is madness." No one moves. Then, behind the line, an officer draws his pistol. The soldiers understand the only way is forward. In the German army of the Second World War, disobedience was not merely forbidden. It was punished with death. What made ordinary men obey impossible orders? This is the dark machinery of coercion that held the Wehrmacht together, even as the war was already lost. Long before the Second World War began, the German military tradition had been built on absolute discipline. Since the days of Prussia, the army was not a place for questioning, but for obedience. The officer commands, the soldier obeys. That was the rule. This culture of obedience became one of the cornerstones of Hitler's military machine. When the Wehrmacht was formed in 1935, every soldier swore a personal oath, not to Germany, not to the Constitution, but to Adolf Hitler himself. I swear by God this sacred oath, that I shall render unconditional obedience to Adolf Hitler, the Führer of the German Reich and people. This oath transformed military loyalty into ideological devotion. Disobeying an order wasn't merely illegal. It was betrayal of the Führer, and therefore betrayal of Germany itself. From the first day of training, soldiers were drilled to follow orders instantly, without hesitation. Hesitation was weakness. Orders were sacred. Fear of authority was natural. But as the war turned against Germany, that fear became the only thing keeping the army moving. By 1942, the German high command realized that morale was collapsing. The victories of the early war were gone. Now came the long, bloody retreat from Stalingrad, the endless mud of the Eastern Front, and the growing sense that Germany could no longer win. To maintain control, the generals turned to systematic coercion. A network of fear and punishment extended from the battlefield to the home front. At its center stood the Feldgendarmerie, the military police. Nicknamed Kettenhund, chain dogs, they were feared by their own comrades more than the enemy. Their job was brutal and simple: enforce discipline, prevent retreat, and hunt deserters. Armed, trained, and authorized to execute on the spot, these men patrolled behind the front lines. If a soldier tried to flee without orders, the Feldgendarmerie could stop him with a bullet. Behind them stood blocking detachments. Officially, their role was to ensure order during retreats. In reality, they shot anyone attempting to flee, forcing soldiers forward under threat of death. The system didn't rely only on fear of death. It used humiliation and social pressure. Soldiers accused of cowardice could be stripped of rank, posted publicly on unit boards, or sent to penal battalions, Strafbataillon. These units were, in effect, death sentences. Men sent there had to clear minefields, attack heavily fortified positions, or carry supplies under fire. Survival rates were terrifyingly low. Sometimes only 1 in 10 came back. Yet these punishments served their purpose, reminding every soldier that hesitation could be worse than dying in battle. The German generals were methodical. They understood human psychology. They knew that fear, shame, and social pressure could move men almost as effectively as orders. 1. Direct threats. Officers often made the threat of execution explicit. In some units, a refusal to advance could result in immediate summary court-martial, or a pistol to the head. This was especially common on the Eastern Front, where Hitler's orders demanded attacks even against overwhelming odds. 2. Public examples. To maintain obedience, generals would sometimes make an example of deserters. Men could be shot at the front or punished in view of the entire company. The message was clear: disobedience would be noticed. It would hurt not only the individual, but also his comrades. 3. Penal battalions. When punishment alone was not enough, soldiers were sent to penal battalions. These units were reserved for the dangerous, untrustworthy, or cowardly. They were sent first into assaults, often against well-fortified enemy positions. Few returned, but those who survived were reintegrated into regular units, and their stories reinforced fear in others. 4. Ideological indoctrination. The Wehrmacht also relied on ideology. Soldiers were told that retreat was betrayal of Germany and of the Führer. This ideological pressure was often combined with practical fear. Men obeyed both because of loyalty and because of punishment. 5. Psychological exhaustion. Long campaigns, hunger, cold, and constant shelling eroded morale. Generals exploited this by offering small incentives alongside threats: extra rations, leave, or recognition for obeying orders. The result was a system where obedience was enforced through a combination of terror and hope, pushing men forward even when death seemed inevitable. Stalingrad, 1942 to 1943. During the winter of 1942, German units were ordered to attack Soviet positions in sub-zero temperatures. Many refused, exhausted and starving. Blocking detachments shot those who tried to retreat. Penal battalions were used to clear minefields and hold positions against overwhelming Soviet attacks. Survivors often described the fear of their own officers as worse than enemy fire. Coercion, 1943. At the Battle of Kursk, divisions faced entrenched Soviet defenses. Generals issued direct orders: advance no matter what. Units that hesitated were threatened with court-martial or reassigned to death squads. The combination of fear, punishment, and social pressure forced soldiers forward into near-certain slaughter. Italy and France, 1944. Even on Western fronts, the Wehrmacht used coercion. Desertion and refusal to fight became more common as the Allies advanced. Generals responded with court-martials, execution squads, and strict enforcement by Feldgendarmerie. The system of punishment kept collapsing units together long enough to resist, but at enormous human cost. The results were devastating. Men obeyed orders, but the obedience was mechanical and forced by fear. Many soldiers were traumatized for life. Others died not by the enemy's bullets, but by the bullets of their own army, or in missions they would never have chosen. The system also corrupted command. Generals became instruments of terror, fearing both the enemy and Hitler's wrath. By the end of the war, obedience was hollow. Units followed orders, but morale was gone. The army functioned, but humanity was stripped from it. History often focuses on strategy, battles, and victories. But behind every order to attack were men, frightened, exhausted, and trapped between death and dishonor. The German army survived for years, not because of loyalty, skill, or courage alone, but because of a brutal system of coercion that made refusal almost impossible. Now consider this. If you were standing in that trench, knowing that refusing meant execution and obeying meant almost certain death, what would you do? Would you march forward? Would you find a way to resist? Or would you survive by obeying?